Room 209. I was somewhere between nowhere and I don't care, chasing the last stretch of a long drive when my GPS led me off the highway and into a mess of back roads. The sun had dipped behind a wall of clouds and a storm was threatening in the rear view. My eyes felt like sandpaper, and the next gas station was 40 miles off. When I saw the flickering sign, Maple View Motel, vacancy, I figured one night wouldn't kill me. The place looked like it had been forgotten by time. 2 stories, peeling paint, weeds poking through the concrete. The kind of place where you expect to find cigarette burns on the sheets and a Bible with torn pages in the drawer. But I didn't care. I just needed sleep. The man at the front desk didn't say much. Middle-aged, with skin like wax and a slow blink that made me uncomfortable. Room 209, he said, sliding a real key across the counter. Not a card, a key. Top of the stairs, quiet up there. I nodded, took the key and started walking. The second-floor hallway smelled like old smoke and cheaper cleaning products. The carpet was worn thin, as if thousands of feet had walked this exact path and never turned around. Room 209 was the last door on the left. I unlocked the door. It creaked open like it didn't want to. The room was cleaner than I expected. Old, sure, but neat. A twin bed with a stiff-looking comforter, a wooden dresser with a TV older than me, and one of those big square mirrors bolted to the wall across from the bed. I set down my bag, pulled off my boots, and collapsed onto the mattress. The storm outside picked up. Rain slapped against the windows, and wind howled like it was trying to say something. I turned on the TV, only static, and eventually just turned it off again. The silence was thicker than the noise. That's when I noticed the mirror. I don't mean I just saw it. I noticed it. I'd glanced at it before, but now I was staring at it. The reflection looked normal, almost. But something was just a little bit wrong. My reflection stood exactly as I did, moved exactly when I did. But when I blinked, it didn't. When I tilted my head, it lagged. Half a second, maybe less. Just enough to feel off. I walked up to it, right to the edge of the dresser. My reflection smiled. I didn't. I backed away. I told myself it was just exhaustion. My brain misfiring, playing tricks. I turned off the lamp, climbed back into bed, and pulled the covers over my head like I used to when I was a kid. Then I heard the whisper. Not from outside, not from the hallway, from inside the room. It was faint, like breath against my ear. You brought it with you. I sat bolt upright. My skin prickled all over. I stared into the darkness, trying to see shapes, movement, anything. The mirror was a faint square in the shadows. Then something moved in it. I wasn't moving. I was still holding my breath. But my reflection, it shifted. Subtle, like it was breathing heavily. Watching me. I fumbled for the lamp and clicked it on. The mirror showed the room perfectly. The bed, the dresser, the door. But I wasn't in it. There was no reflection of me at all. I stood slowly and walked toward the mirror. Still nothing. Then, as I got close enough to touch it, I appeared again. But I was still lying in bed. The version of me in the mirror opened its eyes and stared straight at me. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The reflection smiled again. Wide, too wide. Then it sat up. I turned and ran. I didn't grab my bag. I didn't look back. I yanked open the door and sprinted down the hallway, nearly tripping on the stairs. I burst into the lobby. The man behind the desk was gone. No lights, no radio, no hum of electricity. Just darkness and the storm. I ran outside, into the rain, into my car. The engine hesitated before finally roaring to life. I peeled out of the parking lot like something was chasing me, because, in a way, I think something was. I didn't stop driving until the sun came up. When I finally pulled into a diner 100 miles away, I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face. There was a mirror above the sink. I didn't appear in it right away. The man in the room next door. I was on my way to see my brother after 5 years of silence, the kind of silence that follows a falling out no one can remember the details of, just the weight. I'd driven too far without rest, and by the time the fatigue hit me like a wall, I was deep in rural Oregon with no signs of civilization, except for a flickering light off the side of the road. The motel was a squat, one-story building with a gravel lot and a crooked sign that read, "The Evergreen Inn." The G blinked in and out like a dying heartbeat. I parked, stretched my legs, and stepped into the office. The air smelled like old cigarettes and wet carpet. The man behind the desk looked like he hadn't moved in hours, thin, pale, balding, and watching me with a blank expression that made me hesitate. But I was too tired to be picky. "Just one night," I said. He slid over a key without speaking. "Room 6, metal key, old school, the kind that always feels a little too cold." The room was better than expected, cleanish with a worn bed, a faded painting of a pine forest above the headboard, and a bulky TV that hummed softly even when off. There was also a door on the far wall, locked, presumably the connection to the room next door. I showered, changed into fresh clothes, and tried to sleep. But the walls were thin. Around 2 a.m., I heard something through that adjoining door. Not voices, just movement. A creaking of the bed. Slow, rhythmic. Then a dragging sound, soft but deliberate, like furniture being pulled inch by inch across the floor. Then silence. I told myself it was nothing. Motels are like that. Every creak is exaggerated. I closed my eyes. Knock, knock. 2 soft knocks, coming from the connecting door. I sat up in bed, heart already racing. I waited. Knock, knock. Again. Slower this time. "Hello?" I called, instantly regretting it. No answer. I got up and pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. I went back to bed, left the lamp on. By morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream. But when I stepped outside, something made me look next door. Room 7 didn't have a car parked in front of it. I stopped by the office to ask about it. The man at the desk looked up slowly, like I'd woken him from a trance. "No one in 7, he said. "Hasn't been for a while. Water damage." But I started, then stopped. He was still staring at me. Not blankly anymore. Now it was more cautious. I thanked him and left. Should have left town entirely, but I was too tired to start driving again. I told myself I'd check out first thing in the morning. That night, the storm hit. Rain lashed the windows, wind howled under the door, and just past midnight the noises started again. Dragging, slow and dry, like something heavy being pulled across a wooden floor. Then the knocking returned. Not 2 knocks this time, 5. And this time they were on my door. I froze, the kind of stillness where your ears ring and your breath gets shallow. The peephole was warped from age, but I looked through it anyway. There was someone standing there. I could only see the top of his head slick with rain. He stood perfectly still, not knocking again. Just waiting. I backed away. My phone had no signal. The TV clicked on by itself, blaring static. Then it clicked back off. Another knock, this one louder, more insistent. I grabbed my keys, wallet, and bolted out the bathroom window. When I got to the car, I looked back just once. The door to room 7 was open, but the room beyond it was completely dark, pitch black. Not even lightning lit it. I drove through the storm for 2 hours without stopping. Found a diner, sat in the parking lot until the sun came up. I told the waitress the story. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to say it out loud to believe it happened. When I mentioned the Evergreen Inn, she froze. "That place burned down," she said. 3 years ago. Man died in room 7. They say he used to knock on the connecting door, trying to get help, but no one ever answered. I didn't touch my food, just sat there, staring out the window. I haven't seen my brother yet. I don't think I will. Something followed me out of that room. Every night since, just past midnight, I hear a knock, and I never answer. Static. The only reason I stopped at the Sunset Hollow Motel was because my eyes were closing on their own. It was past midnight, the desert air was thick with heat, and I hadn't passed another car in over an hour. The place looked like it had been carved out of dust and forgotten decades ago. There were only 8 rooms, all in a single row, lit by a buzzing orange light over the office door. The sign out front still claimed color TV and continental breakfast. Bold lies. Inside, the manager looked like someone who hadn't smiled in years. He handed me a key, room 3, without asking for ID or even my name. His hand was cold when our fingers brushed. "There's no phone in the room," he said. "No Wi-Fi. Signal out here's dead." That was fine. I wasn't planning to call anyone. Room 3 smelled like it had been shut for years. Moldy carpet, stale air, something faintly metallic. I turned on the overhead light. It took a second before it flickered to life, casting the walls in a sickly yellow hue. There was a bed, a cracked dresser, and an old TV on a stand, the kind with dials. I don't even know why I turned it on. Habit, I guess. Static. Just white noise. I turned the volume down, but not all the way. The hiss of the static was weirdly comforting, something to drown out the silence pressing against the windows. I kicked off my boots and lay down, too tired to care about the mystery stains on the blanket. Sometime later, could have been minutes or hours, I woke up in the dark. The power was out, the TV was off, the light gone. The silence was crushing. Then I realized the TV was still on. The static was still there, but there was no power. I sat up, heart ticking faster. The screen was glowing faintly now, and the static had changed. Less hiss, more whisper, like someone talking just below hearing level. Words without shape. I leaned closer. The whispering grew louder. Then the screen changed, just for a second. A flash, a face, not mine, not anyone I knew. Pale, hollow eyes, mouth open too wide, as if mid-scream. Then, back to static. I yanked the cord from the wall. Nothing changed. The screen stayed on. I stood up, stumbling backward, and bumped into the dresser. One of the drawers slid open by itself. Inside there was nothing but dust, and an old photo. Curled at the edges, a man standing in front of room 3. Same door, same cracked paint, but his face was missing, scratched out, violently. I dropped the photo. The static from the TV sharpened into a single high-pitched tone. The screen went black. Then it spoke, not through the speakers, through the room. "You shouldn't be here." The words vibrated in the air, low and wrong, like they were being spoken through me. My chest tightened. Then I heard a knock, not at the door, from inside the room, from behind the TV. Another knock, louder, more insistent, then scraping like nails on wood, coming from inside the wall. I grabbed my keys and bolted. The hallway outside was darker than it should have been. I glanced toward the office. No lights, no sign of life. The only sound was the wind scraping against the sand. I turned to look back at room 3. The door was wide open. Inside, the TV was still on. The screen now showed a live feed of me standing outside staring in. Then my reflection on the screen smiled. I wasn't smiling. I ran. Didn't stop for my bag. Didn't stop when I hit the gravel and nearly twisted my ankle. I jumped into my car, turned the key, and slammed the gas. I didn't look back until I hit the highway. There was no sign of the motel. Just desert. I drove until the sun came up, found a gas station. I asked the guy behind the counter if he knew where Sunset Hollow Motel was. He just looked at me and said, "Hasn't been a motel out that way in 30 years. I asked what happened to it. He shrugged. They say there was a fire. Only one guest was staying there, room 3. They never found a body, just the TV, still playing.